Much, Nikki. Uh, as Nikki mentioned, Grads of Life, we have the great pleasure and privilege to partner with the Chamber of Commerce Foundation to develop these resources, the Talent Pipeline Management Resource Guide that she just noted. And we certainly did not do it alone. There were lots and lots of people involved. And our four panelists today were integral in developing these resources. They acted as sort of subject matter experts, offered critical and really important feedback throughout the process and real insights on how to make these guides and resources better. So I'm going to briefly introduce each one of our panelists, and then I have a question for each one of them. And they'll start the question by giving you all just a little more insight into their work, and then address the question. They'll kick it back to me. We'll go through 4 questions, one for each panelist. And then in the second half of the time, we'll open it up to questions from you all in the chat window. And what I'll try to do is I'll try to curate those questions. So if there are questions around a particular theme or a particular topic, I'll see if I can bundle them to the best of my ability. Before we get started, any questions on the format, on what we're doing? Okay, I guess that's pretty good. So our 4 panelists are Chris Deckert, Director of Goodwill Talent Source, Goodwill Industries of Central Indiana; Anna Fontes, Senior Program Director of Capital Impact; Jared Grandy, Executive Director of Student Services of Oakland Schools; and Sandra Howell, Vice President, Talent and Innovation of the Greater Memphis Chamber of Commerce. And the first question is going to go to Jared. And the first question is, Jared, what makes TPM different from other workforce development efforts that seek to connect opportunity population talent to sustainable employment? And why is this an important and timely resource?
So I think one of the things that makes it very different, I mean, obviously for many of us on the call, I think we know what TPM is. I want to make the assumption that everyone on the call has heard of it a little bit, but there's a real focus on employers. And this is definitely about employers stepping up, but also working together, sharing information, just like you would under a normal TPM process. But it's really looking at saying, okay, what are we leaving on the table? And in this case, in regards to talent, there's groups of people who have systematically had barriers to employment. And I know as the day goes on, we'll hear more about some of those barriers. But I think what makes TPM in particular, and with the opportunity panel work that we've done, I think what makes it really different is the fact that the U.S. Chamber is really taking a focus and saying we realize that there is a large pool of talent that is not getting addressed. Many times when you work across the nation, when you look across the nation, there are you may have some employer collaboratives, you might have some talent pipeline work, and they may have different names for all those things. But TPM has made a special point saying, okay, here's an overall umbrella, but here's some specific tools and techniques you can do to get opportunity population more access to employers, and employers more access to that talent. There was another part of your question.
Sure.
An important and timely resource piece. I think right now, one of the big questions, and I know whether it gets addressed at this forum or some of them later on today, but all of us are asking, so what does it mean to work, right? Well, what does it mean to work in general? I say that a little bit joking around, but a lot of what we thought across the country as being business norms have changed in the last 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. And so I think all of us are trying to, in our daily work, figure out what that looks like. And I think TPM at a macro level can really help us define, I won't say help define what work is, but help define and be a support to a new way of working, because I don't see things going back to the way they were, all right? What it means to be talent and have access to talent will probably be less dependent on geography. So that all ties in to me.
Thanks very much, Jared. Next question is going to go to Sandra. Sandra, how can the TPM framework support your work, and how does it connect employers and providers?
So in Memphis, the framework aligns perfectly with the work that we're doing in the chamber. We recently, I'd say within the last year or so, year and a half, decided to really play a more significant role when it comes to talent and workforce development in our community. And we launched an initiative entitled Upscale 901 Talent Initiative. And the framework, the Opportunity Populations framework, aligns perfectly with those goals that we've established under that initiative, as well as overarching goals of the more than 200 stakeholders that participate with us. And that's real plain and simple, and that is to build strong pipelines of skilled talent across industries and be able to maintain those pipelines in regard of the season that we're in, what political official is in place, what grants we have, but that we're able to sustain a talented pool of individuals that meet companies' needs. And so the framework aligns perfectly with those goals, specifically in two very significant places. One, it provides the language and unbiased context for organizations to communicate with employers. We have, everybody knows this who's in this space, that employers get tired of hearing from hundreds of various organizations who are advocating, rightfully so, for their service population to hire my individuals who I train, who I support, who I advocate for. But this, in which the framework gives us kind of a unified language and context to go to employers and say, hey, this is a proven model that we have, and you're missing a population that can help you meet your needs. All of the opportunity populations don't have barriers to employment. It's just that sometimes employers don't know where to find them or how to access that talent, and vice versa. The talent doesn't know how to connect with those employers. So this framework gives us kind of that guiding tool to be able to connect the two. But those who do have barriers, it also gives us the context and the language to advocate more effectively with those employers. Here in Memphis, we've heard from employers, especially those at the local level, the leaders, the line managers, the plant managers, et cetera, who say, we do want to be able to hire individuals who have some barriers. However, it's not in our hands. It's at the corporate level. It's in the legal entities' hands, who say we can't assume the liability, but the framework helps us say, hey, here's a proven model that has been tried and tested that will help break down some of those barriers. And so we're using it in that context, and we're hoping to be able to spread the word and to get more support at a local level, because we have tons of skilled talent here, again, that we're not, it's not, historically, we haven't accessed all of our talent. We have new programs here that are training people who have criminal backgrounds to do coding, who are being hired, and who have advocates for them to get them in place. We have young people who are coming out of high school with industry recognized certifications, but who aren't being looked at by employers. So we have significant opportunity populations that can help us meet our talent needs that industries have, if in fact we can agree to open those doors and open our minds and those opportunities and make them available.
Thanks, Sandra. Third question is for Chris. How do you envision these resources being used, and how do you intend to use these resources moving forward?
Sure, thanks. So with Goodwill of Central and Southern Indiana, we actually are a large employer of individuals with barriers. That's part of our mission, has been since our inception. Of the 4,000 plus employees we have at our Goodwill, 61% of them have an identified barrier. So we have a long-standing, commitment to employing individuals with barriers, but we also, through our mission of education, now have a long-standing commitment of helping individuals improve their education and obtaining external employment outside of Goodwill. So we operate 16 charter schools in the state of Indiana. We also have a national office that helps Goodwills across the country launch these adult charter schools. These are high schools for adults to come back and complete a high school diploma and also complete an industry recognized certification. So we are now in our 10th year of these schools, and what we are seeing is a more direct connection to the workforce that provides an increased opportunity, much more than a high school diploma by itself. So we're focusing on middle skill jobs. And what we're seeing, for example, is our goal, and one of our goals in our strategic plan has always been 20% of our placements externally be at that middle skill level. We're actually at 37% of our placements this year in 2020 with everything that has happened. 37% of the individuals that we're helping with employment outside of Goodwill are moving into middle skill jobs. And what we're seeing in their incomes is almost $600 more per month on average if they have a middle skill credential and they're moving into these jobs. We work with our employer partners to help them identify those feeder jobs so that they can continue. And once our graduates get onto a pathway of employment, especially in good middle skill careers, we're seeing that they stick often with that employer for a long pathway. So the way we plan to use these resources, a lot of our work, we work with over 100 employers to directly connect our talent that we're producing to them. But a lot of times our conversations are one employer at a time. And what we hope to do with this new resource is to gather a larger contingency in partnership with the U.S. Chamber, our state chamber, our community college system, and a variety of employers to help them strategize and just have a collective conversation. We know that employers, at least they have come to Goodwill for years looking for a more diverse talent pool. They know that that is our reputation. So they come and they come willingly seeking more diverse talent. But we haven't really had a venue to bring them together in a collective conversation and to do some structured activities around looking at their pain points, analyzing their workforce data, and then really looking at providers and how can we accelerate some of these programs that have just taken too long and the pipelines are just have run dry for our employers.
Thanks very much, Chris. And Anna, what are concrete action steps that participants on the call can take once they've reviewed the resources? Where would you recommend they start?
You gave me the one of the biggest questions, and I've actually had fun kind of working over the weekend to think through an answer for you all. Good morning. It's still morning over here in California for me. I'm Anna Fontes with Capital Impact TPM Cohort 9. Really happy to be here. We just wrapped up our first TPM Academy in California on construction workforce, and a lot of the work and Academy goals were around this very, very topic. I've put my answer into 3 quick parts here. I'm really grateful for the process and the opportunity to be a part of this work, especially because it really makes these big challenges a little bit smaller and gives us little pieces to tackle at one time. And the first place that I would start is these resources help us think beyond exposure, assuming that exposure is the problem for career pathways and guiding opportunity populations to enter into some of these high quality jobs. And it really helps us, just like Chris just said, so many of the individuals she works with have an identified barrier. There is a barrier there. And so it's really moving, and this is why I love TPM, is we've sophisticated the work from assuming, hey, these people don't know about these high quality jobs, is the will is there and motivation's there from both ends of the formula. Let's figure out a way to make this happen and address some of those barriers. So looking into the barriers that have plagued certain communities for centuries. And to be very, very candid, a lot of these barriers were put there intentionally. And I don't say that to be controversial, but I say that to say we'll need additional intention to make a solution happen, especially one that's sustainable. The second piece is looking inward and being reflective of, am I ready, or is my workplace ready to include a new population here? And the reason why I'm pulling out this example is I see it especially in STEM. I know that's not my area of expertise, but I'm going to say it anyway because Silicon Valley is like a hop and a skip that way. There are so many women in tech, women in coding, Black girls code, you name it. So much energy for underrepresented populations in the technology sector. But then you see a lot of letters come out from some of these populations. I think it was 2014 when Uber, the Uber letter came out, and I don't want to digress here, but there are still some really repeated negative experience happening across the board for some of these populations. So asking yourself, I'm excited for these opportunity populations. Is my existing workforce excited, welcoming, open? And unfortunately, we don't get too far into that and into the resources, which is why it's a step to start to examine after you examine the resources, but how are you prepping your workplace? And then the last piece is to start to design your steps around elevating community voice. What existing infrastructure is there at your organization to start listening, both to existing employees, which is always a great starting place if you already have somewhat of a diverse workforce. What's your infrastructure for listening to them, and also listening to potential new experiences and new voices that are coming into your workplace, so you'll be able to have that continuous improvement. So all in all, I think I would wrap by saying, and hopefully Jason's not going to be too mad at me for taking some TPM lingo, but it is doing your homework all over again and in a different way, but just like in the TPM process, it's going to bear some really great solutions.
Thank you, Anna. So we're now going to open it up to the audience for questions, and please, you can send them to me directly if you'd like. Philip Price, you can find me on the list of participants. And I will, as folks are answering questions and fielding them, I'll try to bundle them if there are some themes that emerge. But the first question that came in, and I'll open this up to our panelists, and they can field them as they see fit. We'll start with one panelist per question, but if folks want to weigh in additionally, just let me know, and we'll stay on a question until we've worked it a bit. First question is, how has the digital divide impacted our training offerings, or your training offerings? And this also includes, how can we do effective training in a virtual world? So I'm curious whether any of our panelists would like to field that one. Again, the question, how has the digital divide impacted your training offerings? This also includes, how can we do effective training in a virtual world?
You know,
I can go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Chair. You know, for us, if there's anything positive that came out of the pandemic, it is that our community really has, especially in the workforce ecosystem, really has come together to figure this out, because we know that there's such a pressing need, and we can't afford to lose ground with educating our young people, our adults, and taking the chance that our economic base will deteriorate because of the pandemic. And so our training providers are four-year institutions, as well as our K through 12 institutions, as well as our employers. We have really rallied together to figure out, how do we upskill individuals, particularly in the IT space. A lot of innovation that was already being talked about has really come into play now when it talks about IT. We have from the state that has actually moved toward making sure that some of our less served communities have access to technology, especially for our K through 12. Our 2- and 4-year institutions have done the same for the students who are there. And so, and it's all been rallied around how do we support one another. The Chamber has also come into play to help those institutions get those resources. So for us, it's really been a point of rallying together and coming together to really overcome this thing that we never saw coming, and we don't know when it'll end. But, you know, our community really has stood together and made sure that our students have access, and a lot of our programs have really been expedited and moved to the forefront around technology and moving people beyond entry level, but really to higher level opportunities in that space.
Thanks, Sandra. I'm sorry, Chris, you wanted to go, and Jared, did you have something to add as well? Okay, so Chris and then Jared.
Yeah, I would echo Sandra. There have been some silver linings to this experience. Once we were able to deploy Chromebooks to not just our students, but our mission participants who are also in these trainings, then we had to do some rapid planning with our variety of training providers, you know, that may or may not have had any experience in a virtual environment. Then the testing companies for these national certification exams, the virtual proctoring was not a smooth process for many of some of the largest industry certification providers in the country. And we had to experience some failure to get really some pushback to get some of those things changed. So that process is smoothing out in terms of the delivery of training and the provision of certification exams in a virtual environment. But in terms of working with employers, it has never been easier for us to get an employer in a room per se, right? So we operate 39 counties, trying to coordinate in-person job fairs and in-person classroom speakers with HR and recruiters who are very limited in time. It was very difficult, and now space and location are meaningless. We can coordinate employers into our virtual classrooms easier than we have ever done it before, and we're just, all of our programs are blossoming because of it.
Thanks very much, Chris. And Jared, you had something you wanted to add.
I thought I did. I think they covered just about everything I was going to say. So I'll just say that really maybe the only additional thing, in case I missed it, besides providing some infrastructure and all that, it's getting your own staff up to speed on how to deliver content digitally. So a lot of times, and in my role, we have I have direct instruction, and I have campuses where we do career technical education in 4 different quadrants of the county. But then we also have staff that consult and work with our local districts, our 28 local districts in my county as well. And all of that comes down to a lot of also training, I'll say train the trainers, but essentially getting people to understand that teaching is going to look different online, just like as we all know, kind of navigating a conference is going to look different online. So I think that might be the only thing to add, and did all the other stuff.
Okay, thanks very much. And Jared, I can very much you know, piggyback or agree with what you just said about online teaching is different than classroom teaching, and it requires some significant professional development to do that. Graduate Life is closely partnered with a national organization called Year Up, which is a 1-year fellowship for low-income young adults to transition into Fortune 500 companies. And Year Up has been working overtime in the last 6 months in the sort of result of COVID to make that transition to almost purely online. And you can do it, but it definitely takes some time. Next question that came in, and I'm just going to quickly read it. Excuse my squinting. I just have to look at the text. Is how does TPM ensure that employers are aware of the 2,000 plus local adult ed programs that WIOA funded, providing services to more than 1.5 million adult learners? These programs have a 73% success rate and provide a diploma that is college and career readiness aligned. Are employers aware of this talent pipeline? That was a mouthful. I'll read it again. How does TPM ensure that employers are aware of the 2,000 plus local adult ed programs that WIOA funded, providing services to more than 1.5 million adult learners? So that's the first part of the question.
So I guess I'd stake a claim that I don't know if TPM ensures anything. I think TPM is a process to bring people to the table and then get some meaningful work done that is driven by employers. Ultimately, it's like any other motivation, it has to be intrinsic. You can show the external reasons why it makes sense, why it makes sense, but intrinsically people have to say, okay, I understand that, and now I see something in it for me, for my organization, me on the supply side, or me being the employer on the other side. So on the demand side. So I think that's one part, but I do know that everybody on the supply, I shouldn't say everybody, but people on the supply side are aware of WIOA. Myself and plenty of other people work in that space, work in that area. But I don't know the insure part. That's not what I'm not quite clear on that. So I'll leave that to my colleagues.
You know, I agree with Jared. It doesn't, the curriculum does not ensure anything. However, what it does do is provide an opportunity when you start looking at where your sources of talent are to consider whether what WIOA provides and where those pools of talent are. And we have those very specific conversations. We have a strong partnership with our WIOA network. And so again, like Jared said, the curriculum doesn't ensure any of it. However, it does provide the language and the map for you to look at where your various sources of talent are. And WIOA is one of those crucial sources.
Great. From our panel, any additional thoughts on that particular question? Okay. So in addition to audience questions, I had a few that I was mulling over this morning that I thought might be worthwhile to kind of surface here in the mix. As we were going through the review process, writing these materials, we had a long and very robust and important discussion about how to define opportunity populations. And I was wondering whether our panelists would comment a little bit about what an opportunity population is and why this definition is, a challenging one to kind of, rein in on a very narrow focus.
Yeah, I can maybe kick us off because, excuse me, I think I have the broadest, most expansive and least defined definition. Sorry for an oxymoron on a Monday afternoon. For me, and I think I surfaced this in our discussions, I define opportunity populations as any community that's underrepresented in a particular occupation or sector. And honestly, that's, California is known for its diversity and it's discussed robustly, but many sectors, and construction is one of them, where we're seeing a more homogeneous workforce. And so when you start kind of digging into why we did uncover quite some barriers for people who are maybe not even particularly extremely low income or things like that. And so for me, I really lean on underrepresented because I think that once you start sniffing on that path, you will definitely uncover some clues and some concrete barriers like we've been talking about.
Thanks, Anna. Any other of our panelists would like to kind of weigh in on this idea of how one defines an opportunity population, why it's a difficult sort of definition to get a handle on, and what that means for TPM or for this resource guide?
Phil, I'll take a stab at that as well as Anna. I mean, Goodwill, historically our mission was focused on individuals with disabilities and increasing their representation and involvement in the workforce. But with our venture into education, we began serving individuals that had never completed their high school diploma. And by nature, what we see are the individuals that we are serving often have multiple characteristics that would identify them with an opportunity population. So our focus at Goodwill is on many of the same populations that are outlined in the guide. The guide defines opportunity populations, people who experience a barrier to employment. And opportunity youth, the WIOA fundings, we focus on a broad variety of populations that we feel provide an opportunity to employers, that they may not realize the opportunity that uplifting and upskilling individuals who have had a barrier and have not been able to fully participate in the workforce can, employers, just by having conversations and understanding more about those organizations that are serving a variety of opportunity populations, employers can just develop those relationships and then identify what are those on-ramps to get them into our workforce and to keep them into our workforce. So we like the broad definition that is outlined in the resource, because a lot of times one individual may actually be in a variety of those definitions.
Thanks very much, Chris. Appreciate that. Are there any final thoughts on that particular question before I have another one connected in that kind of line of thinking as it relates to the TPM? Guys. Okay. So the next question that in a lot of the review stuff that we mulled over and talked a lot about is, given this broad definition of opportunity populations, what are the kinds of opportunity population providers and services that may be helpful to employers, and why would these be helpful? Again, I'll say that again just to kind of let it sink in, because it's a new question. But given the broad definition of opportunity populations, employers may need to access a wide variety of practitioners to get resources and supports. And I'm wondering whether our panelists can comment on maybe a specific example of a kind of partnership in action for a particular opportunity population or a particular employer partnership. So for our panelists, do you have examples of those kinds of matches between employers and practitioners, and how they help capitalize on the strengths of opportunity populations?
You know, this is Sandra. There are so many organizations and opportunity individuals, if you will, are those who we're categorizing as opportunity population. They're everywhere, right? They're everywhere, and every organization that provides services touches them. So it's just about us, the employers, and those who are the intermediaries or the facilitators, to be able to have a conscious mind about making sure that we're including, that we're pointing them out so that we can bring them into these opportunities. You know, they're the WIOA agencies, there are educational providers that track that specific data. There are nonprofit organizations. And for us, it's also our faith-based community, which has come forward in a very strong way through our Upskill initiative. We have over 500 faith-based organizations, well, 2 organizations that represent over 500 faith-based organizations collectively, who are at the table, who are saying, I have these individuals, I have people who have criminal backgrounds, who work for the church, who have proven themselves, and we're trying to get them into gainful employment. We have the young person who has no history. We have the single mother who needs just a little bit of support resources to be able to go to work and to get her education. And so they're everywhere, and all organizations that touch people touch them as well. We just need to be very conscious about that, and very understanding and very inclusive to make sure they have equal access to opportunities.
Thanks, Sandra. Would any of our other panelists like to comment on this idea of that kind of matching?
I had a quick example, and I really like how both TPM and you as the moderator are talking about these opportunities as partnerships, because I don't necessarily look at a partnership with an external non-employer organization as transactional, but now I have another brainstorming buddy. Now I have another teammate. And we've partnered with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, which really helps bridge individuals returning from incarceration into housing, employment, other services, healthcare that they may need. And they've been very helpful in just co-designing and identifying opportunities that we wouldn't have seen or talking through why the barrier of getting into a construction union is slightly different for that population than others. And we've helped, look at what we have in our pantry, what are our resources that we can deploy in service of them. So it has been me looking at, oh, what do you have over there? And I'm not going to take another step forward until I know completely. It's that knowledge and understanding that we both have assets and really great insight to bring to the table. And they've been able to help us co-design many solutions, honestly, to present to our employer collaborative as well as the community at large.
Great. Thanks very much, Anna. Any final comments on that before I move on to another piece? Anna, what you had just said made me think of a partnership we had Grads of Life with Hyatt Hotels, and we were helping them think through some of their opportunity population strategy, and they found out the importance of sort of local initiatives obviously resonated with them, and they had highlighted a partnership that one of their hotels in, I think it was Calgary, Canada, had with a local organization that served young people on the autism spectrum. And there was a partnership that they were working on to get young people on the autism spectrum into Hyatt hotels working in part-time and full-time jobs. And the folks at the hotel couldn't have been more complimentary of this partnership. They said, listen, this organization knows this population really, really well. They have helped us understand the strengths of people on the autism spectrum. They have helped us think about how best to manage these folks. They have provided outside resources that then enhance what we can do in the workplace. And I almost wish they were on the call today, because they were so effusive in the benefits to everyone involved with this kind of partnership. And so the reason I wanted to highlight that is it got me thinking, Anna, as you were talking about, the nature of both parties really bringing something great to the table.
I wanted to actually add one more very quick thing. I promise that it's relevant, which is this partnership that I described with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition ended up being an additional solution to our original Academy pain point, which was identifying and creating a local pipeline. We just finished, like I said, our Academy, and what came out in our talent data, which was shocking, is that only 1 in 5 of the individuals identified came from within an hour of the Sacramento region, which was shocking, which is, 80% from across the country, across the state of California. So part of what the Anti-Recidivism Coalition is actually helping us, they're sourcing their communities from local incarceration correctional facilities. And it's helping us really bring in that local workforce as well, which was like an unexpected kind of silver lining.
No, that's great, and I appreciate you bringing up the unanticipated benefits.
I can say that if it's easier.
Sure. Go ahead.
Sorry, it was a long one, but one of the things that came up a lot in our review committee process was this idea of thinking about barriers beyond that point of recruitment or getting somebody into their initial job or into kind of the workforce, and thinking about potential barriers in career advancement or shifting in roles. I just wanted to pick your all's brain in the last, 1 minute of ideas in which we can ensure that we're thinking about utilizing the TPM process beyond those initial barriers and ensuring that we have that kind of streamlined approach throughout somebody's career.
Nikki, I'd love to say just a few words on that. We see a lot of employers that they do have those members of their incumbent workforce who have been employed maybe in the same 1 or 2 positions for many years, and as the employer might change their job descriptions and look at their career pathways, and sometimes they implement a requirement for something like a high school diploma that wasn't there when that person got hired on. And so the opportunity to complete a high school diploma becomes very important for an incumbent worker to advance. But the conversations that we have, which I love that the guide touches on this, is encouraging employers to not think about the high school diploma as that line in the sand, and to look at their job descriptions for the competencies that they need their employees to have, because those competencies are rarely demonstrated by a high school diploma. The knowledge that they've gained in the years of work experience are not evidenced by a high school diploma. And we have success in getting employers to rethink jobs for which they had put that line in the sand of a high school diploma, and to eliminate that requirement, and to focus more on a certification or strictly on competencies in their hiring and promotion processes. We see a lot of employers that initially stop and mold this over when we first mention it, and then come back to the table and say, we've found a few jobs which we're willing to do this with. And that is a point for us to begin building pathways for incumbent workers without telling them you have to go back and get a high school diploma.
I'd add on to, I agree with Chris and say it's not just the high school diploma. I'd say degree creep in general, because many times we assume because someone has a bachelor's degree that they have the skills, and that may not necessarily be the case. And there's plenty of research out there. So I'd say it's just degree creep in general. The other thing I'd add, I think employers gotta, as much as we talk about ROI, they have to look at ROI differently, in my opinion. It's not, many times we look at it, what can we get out of it from supply side or from employer side? And I think the thinking has to be more of, okay, well, why wouldn't you do this, right? There's been enough research, enough work done to show what happens to a community, what happens to employers when they bring in opportunity populations, when their workforce is more diverse. All these different, there's been study after study, but yet here we are. So, you know, I'd say move away from, well, why? Show me the data that shows me we should, and employers really got to get out of that thinking and say, well, why wouldn't we? Where's the data that says bringing in different diverse talent and bringing in however they may be defined opportunity populations? Where's the data support that that's bad? And if you can't find data to say that's bad, then stop it. Just stop it.
Jared, thank you. Thanks to all four of our panelists for sharing your wisdom and your insight, and all for helping us really vet and edit and revise the guides so that they are useful and helpful to people. We're going to pivot now to the next part of our session. And I feel like, Jared, you really summed it up in the last word, is why shouldn't we? And with that, I will turn it back over to Nikki.
Thanks, Phil, and thank you to all four of our panelists. As was mentioned, thought that was a great conversation, and really it puts us in a good place to move into our next part of today, which is going to be kind of our working group